The filmography of Martin Scorsese is exquisite. Undeniably, though, it exists in eternal debt to both the legacies of Italian Neorealism and the French New Wave. There is, however, another, lesser explored yet equally foundational film movement that the iconic American director drew profound inspiration from. The Polish film school emerged from a tight-knit group of filmmakers, primarily graduates of the National Film School of Lodz, who produced a pivotal body of work between 1956 and 1963. Their films, shaped by common influences and a response to significant historical events, provided a crucial blueprint for Martin Scorsese's artistic expression, influencing not just how he made films, but also why. This influential group included names like Andrzej Wajda, Andrzej Munch, Jerzy Kawalerowicz, Roman Polanski, and Wojciech Has. It was during Scorsese's formative years at New York University that he discovered their work, recognizing in its raw power and thematic depth a deep resonance with his own emerging artistic vision.
The impact became so strong that to this day it's part of the language of certainly the films I make, if not my life, really.
But what was this obscure Polish movement in cinema, and what about it was so compelling to have influenced perhaps the most profoundly influential filmmaker of our time? The Polish film school emerged amidst the political upheaval of the mid-1950s. While Stalin's death in 1953 marked the initial thaw across the Eastern Bloc, opening a brief window for reform and liberalization, the year 1956 was uniquely pivotal in Poland. It was then that the Polish Stalinist leader Bolesław Bierut died, paving the way for a reformist faction led by Władysław Gomułka to seize power. This internal shift dramatically sped up the liberalization process, fostering an environment of new openness to international culture.
The theater of Warsaw, once the vehicle for grim propaganda plays, now blossomed out with political satires and with imports from France and America.
In both the USSR and Poland, films from the West suddenly became available to students and industry professionals, including a group of graduates from the Lodz School. These young artists could now devour the fruits of contemporary American and Italian filmmaking, metabolizing these new styles in their own works in an attempt to make sense of post-war Polish society. This period saw Polish filmmakers begin to forge a distinct cinematic voice. They actively sought to move beyond the rigid constraints of socialist realism, a state-imposed aesthetic that glorified the working class and the Communist Party through simplistic narratives. In stark contrast, the Polish film school embraced complexity and ambiguity, focusing on individual struggles and moral dilemmas within a society scarred by war and navigating a new political reality. Their films often explored the psychological toll of conflict and the challenges of forging a national identity after immense trauma. One does not need to search too deeply in the work of Martin Scorsese to uncover thematic parallels within his own layered artistic investigations. His own cinema is replete with characters grappling with identity, moral ambiguities, and the psychological weight of their past and present. Consider the tortured guilt of Charlie in Mean Streets, the self-destructive spiral of Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull, or the existential crises of Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. These protagonists, much like the conflicted figures of Polish cinema, are often outsiders haunted by their environment and their own internal battles. Furthermore, Scorsese's recurring exploration of the immigrant experience in his early work closely intertwines with questions of national identity, a central theme for the Polish film school. Poland's profound suffering during World War II, marked by invasion, occupation, and the Holocaust, left deep scars that heavily influenced its post-war cinema. The war's impact was both universal and deeply personal, with Andrzej Wajda's father killed by the Red Army, Jerzy Skolimowski's by the Nazis, Roman Polanski's mother dying in Auschwitz, and Andrzej Munch spending the war in hiding with a false identity, also taking part in the Warsaw Uprising. Needless to say, a generation of traumatized men and women were then faced with the task of reconstructing the physical and emotional infrastructure of their country. The Lodz Film School became a natural outlet for this generation. As Andrzej Wajda described its emergence, it was, quote, a natural birth. Directors couldn't help but make films about their sole experience, the war. In Wajda's telling, the conflict also helped to define the stylistic boundaries of the school. Quote, the facts were so terrible that to fictionalize them was difficult. However, since our artistic and literary traditions are romantic, the documentary element appearing in our films soon blended with fiction. The Baroque images, the bitter ironies, and romanticism of my films were all created by the Polish school. Andrzej Wajda's war trilogy, including A Generation in 1955, Canal from 1957, and Ashes and Diamonds from 1958, is a towering achievement, often cited as the foundation of the film school movement. Ashes and Diamonds in particular features Zbigniew Cebulski, often dubbed Poland's James Dean, as Messiek, an anti-communist underground member caught in the trap of his own cynicism. The unforgettable performance of Cebulski with his iconic sunglasses and existential bravado struck a particularly resonant chord with the young Martin Scorsese, who would later famously pay direct homage to Cebulski's Messiek in his seminal 1973 film Mean Streets.
Mean Streets is filled with visual references to Ashes and Diamonds.
In a pivotal scene, Harvey Keitel's character, Charlie, dons a pair of sunglasses, a deliberate visual echo of Messiek's signature look in Ashes and Diamonds, signaling a shared rebellious spirit and an underlying sense of tragic detachment.
The sunglasses Zbigniew Cebulski wears in the film, I have to admit, are pretty cool. His presence, electrifying, a shocking performance, really. It was modern then, it's modern now.
Further parallels with the Polish school can be traced in Scorsese's Raging Bull from 1980. While celebrated for its gritty realism, its stark black and white cinematography and brutal, almost operatic depiction of violence bear a striking resemblance to the Polish film school's visual audacity and thematic concerns. Polish directors, constantly battling strict censorship, were compelled to employ precise artistic strategies for survival. Complex visuals, a romantic yet unflinching realism, and subtle ironies allowed them to discuss sensitive and challenging topics indirectly, in a way that wouldn't immediately be obvious to, and therefore banned by, the authorities. Scorsese's unflinching and often complex visual choices in Raging Bull, the high-contrast black and white cinematography, slow motion, extreme close-ups, and jarring jump cuts directly echo the Polish school's methods for conveying internal states. We see this in the dreamlike, fragmented sequences of Wajda's Ashes and Diamonds, as well as the psychologically charged takes and symbolic imagery in Wojciech Hass's The Hourglass Sanatorium from 1973. In Raging Bull, the blood and sweat, distorted faces, and abrupt cuts aren't just about violence. They are visual manifestations of protagonist LaMotta's escalating rage, paranoia, and self-destruction, emphasizing his psychological breakdown. LaMotta's futile cycle of self-inflicted torment, his inability to escape destructive impulses, directly reflects characters like Cebulski's Maciek in Ashes and Diamonds. Maciek, a reluctant assassin haunted by his past, grapples with existential despair and the futility of violence. His iconic final sequence, stumbling through a trash dump to his death, embodies a fatalistic end to a life consumed by destructive forces, a mirror to LaMotta's own physical and moral decay. This shared air of fatalism, where characters are caught in inescapable traps defined by their pasts and driven by self-destructive urges, is prevalent in both Polish cinema and Scorsese's filmography. Other examples from Polish cinema include the tragic choices forced upon characters in Andrzej Munch's Eroica, or the doomed romance against a backdrop of war in Wojciech Has's Farewells.
Pojechał jednak.
To przykre, ale w tej sytuacji nie zajedzie daleko.
What this perhaps suggests is Scorsese's earlier internalization of the Polish film school's understanding of how intense personal struggle and moral ambiguity can be elevated through thoughtfully layered cinematic art. Beyond the horrors of the Second World War, the Polish film school also explored post-war social pressures and archetypes in the newly communist Poland. Following Stalin's death, a cautious liberalization across the Eastern Bloc led to a number of films exploring questions of sexual politics with a surprisingly subversive eye. Roman Polanski's only Polish film, Knife in the Water from 1962, was a psychological thriller exploring masculine sexual neuroses. Leon Niemczek, the lead in Polanski's film, explored similar themes alongside Zbigniew Cebulski in Jerzy Kabelerowicz's Night Train from 1959, a Hitchcockian suspense film set aboard a sleeping carriage. In a similar vein, Jerzy Kabelerowicz's Mother Joan of Angels from 1961, a singular film school title, delved into themes of repressed desire and forbidden sexuality under the guise of demonic possession within a 17th century convent. Its chilling narrative, blurring psychological unrest with supernatural phenomena in an insular community, can be seen as an early artistic seed for directors like David Lynch, Ari Aster, and Robert Eggers, all of whom similarly craft unsettling stories where deep, unnerving ambiguity permeates every frame. The Polish film school, though impactful, was short-lived. Unable to submit the communist present tense to the same revisionist treatment that it had brought to the war, the momentum behind the group faded away. In Andrzej Wajda's telling, quote, "The Polish school came to an end because it never found a new subject through which it could evolve and transform itself further. The next subject for Polish cinema should have been Stalinism." It wasn't long before most core members had either emigrated, died, or evolved away from directing. Only Andrzej Wajda and Wojciech Has continued to have substantial careers within Poland, with Wajda winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes for Manawajan in 1981, and Wojciech Has carving a niche as a master of the surreal and literary in films like The Saragossa Manuscript from 1965 and The Hourglass Sanatorium from 1973. Films one can arguably find echoes of in the meticulously constructed frames and theatrical staging of Wes Anderson. The Polish film school significantly influenced the next generation of Polish auteurs, leading to the emergence of the cinema of moral anxiety a decade later. This movement, spearheaded by directors like Krzysztof Kieślowski, Krzysztof Zanussi, and Agnieszka Holland, critically examined the decay within communist Poland. Their films often featured bleak settings and desperate characters, offering a world-weary social critique later echoed by Béla Tarr in Hungary. The afterlife of the Polish film school, however, extends far beyond these direct regional successions. The movement may have flickered brightly for a short period and remained a lesser-known chapter in cinematic history, yet its light casts long shadows of influence. With giants like Martin Scorsese championing its unique vision, and through the countless others it has subtly shaped, this small collective of Łódź graduates continues to exert a profound and undeniable influence that still resonates today.
I really find it's a cinema of personal vision, social commitment, and poetic responsibility, and sets a high standard for all of us. And you get the sense, that the filmmakers are trying to break loose from the prison in which the human spirit finds itself trapped.
Right now, on Klassiki, you can stream our entire collection of Polish film school titles for free as part of our 7-day free trial. This includes Andrzej Munch's Eroica, Wojciech Has's Farewells, and others. Follow the link in the description to watch now or to explore our wider collection of Polish titles amidst our full library of Eastern European cinema.